Okay, this is our drain piping for our water heater. Larger one is for the pressure relief valve. The smaller one is for the condensate, the acidic condensate. So depending on how you feel about it, that might be an acceptable application. But a lot of people prefer to have a neutralizing filter on their acidic condensate. Let's go inside and talk about this a little bit more. Okay, so over here in the corner of the garage we have, this is our water heater. It's a tankless water heater. It's a Renee, however you pronounce it. I don't see the care and use manual. It's kind of hard. I tried to get the model number over here. This is our exhaust flue. This is fine. This is the condensate that I was talking about. Okay, this is a Porsche. This is a Lamborghini. This is not a Ford Fiero. You know, it's not a little beater that you drive to work every day. This is a nice piece of equipment. You want to get the most you can out of your equipment. So this is the condensate drain line right here. It's the acidic drain, because what we do is we capture it. That's why we can have a plastic vent pipe, is we capture all the heat that we deliver through this gas piping. We've captured that heat and put it directly into the water. So we're still exhausting carbon monoxide, we're still exhausting fumes, but we're not exhausting heat. Our heat's staying inside the water, the heat that we paid for. And when we do that, it creates this thing called condensate. And that's what and I'm glad we've got this. But if you read the instructions, which we don't have, this condensate line is supposed to have a dip tube in it, all right, a little loop. And it's supposed to have a vacuum breaker in it. I get it, it's in this pipe, you know, but that's not a vacuum breaker right there. That's a pretty good seal. So we're supposed to have a vacuum breaker and a dip tube in here, and that goes out and takes the acid and dumps it on the other side of the wall there. So what the manufacturer has, and what a lot of people use and a lot of municipalities require, is that we actually have a neutralizing filter on this. So this condensate line should have a vacuum breaker, it should have a loop, and I maintain that it should have a neutralizing filter. And we can argue about one out of three, but you can't argue about all three. It still needs a vacuum breaker, it still needs a loop, and I still think it needs the neutralizing filter. But that's, you know, if you want to have a different conversation about that, that's fine. But we're not ignoring the loop. We're not ignoring the vacuum breaker. And if you had a vacuum breaker in here, also, that's right here, your pressure relief valve. All right. It's also supposed to have, in the same room with the water heater, okay, according to the plumbing code, plumbing code in some municipalities, you're supposed to have a vacuum breaker here. You're supposed to have a vacuum breaker here. You're supposed to have a vacuum breaker here. All right, now with a vacuum breaker on this thing that's letting loose at 200 psi, you probably don't want a vacuum breaker in the same room. You would remedy that by having a safety pan. Now, a safety pan is required on storage tanks. This is not a storage tank. This is a tankless on-demand water heater. So in some instances, I don't have the manufacturer. Some manufacturers require it. I don't have the manual. Okay, but if you wanted to install this correctly, an economic workaround would be go ahead, because you can't be too safe. This is water. This is where you keep things. Okay, a safety pan is relatively inexpensive. Allows you to put your vacuum breakers in. Everything is fixed. No big deal. Easy peasy. Now when this was installed, they just bolted it up. Good to go. They just bolted it up. How do you know that, bud? Because that right there, this gas, it works. My client's been living here for a year and he doesn't have any problems with the hot water. He didn't express any to me so far yet. No problems with the water heater being hot. So we know that the Ford Fiesta, whatever the little Escort thing it is, Focus, take your pick, okay? Even though this little thing's working, your Lamborghini might not be working. You dial this in with a nanometer. Most plumbers don't even have a nanometer on their truck, or if they do, it's all dusty underneath their seat somewhere. So yes, you can just bolt this up, but if you read the instructions say adjust this. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to bake into your report instructions about this, and I'm going to bake into your report instructions about this. I'll even bake into your report instructions about this. All these things are knowns. This is not like alien stuff. I just don't understand how it never happens. But this is pretty routine stuff. Now I'm going to get off of this for a moment. Just take your notes. This water heater, it might last 15 years, but it'll probably last 5. What? Sorry, not me. Might last 5. Why? Because this wasn't serviced. This screen right here is supposed to be serviced once a year. It's very easy to do. You isolate these handles, and I see they took the handles off of these to kind of keep people from trying to do it themselves. You can go on YouTube and get the instructions and learn how to do this. It's pretty easy. Or you could just hire a plumber to do it. He's not going to charge you very much. But if this isn't serviced once a year, this is all these tolerances, everything is so critical. It's not going to last very long. You service this once a year, then you're going to, then your chances of getting 15 years use out of this have escalated. The odds are in your favor. You've done the right thing. That's what is supposed to happen. So that needs to be serviced. That was never adjusted. We do not have a loop. We do not have a neutralizing filter. We do not have a vacuum breaker. We do not have a vacuum breaker here.